Lately, I've been thinking about a concept I like to call talking to someone from behind their back, which in turn is an extension of talking about someone behind their back. Because the idea goes, you have had a conversation about someone else, and from that conversation, you decide to say something that only made sense and could make sense in the context of that conversation. It's basically a way for you to overwrite a person, their autonomy, their authorship, their interiority, to make them make sense in your world. And I've seen it so much in my life that I wonder how it ever feels positive to the person doing it. Now, me personally, I don't like talking about people in that way that people gossip and what have you and so forth, but also in that way people kind of like say offhanded, mean spirited comments. Like, whenever I'm involved with that, first and foremost, I feel disgusted in myself, but also like, ew. Well, I mean, that's the same thing, isn't it? Ew, this isn't me. But what is me is, of course, Lord Nashu, and this is another Thus Spoke of by. And today in Thus Spoke Lord Nashu, I'm talking about this concept of talking at someone from behind their back because it's been circling in my head for too many years of my life. Two instances come to mind. The first is with a former friend of mine, shortly before he became a former friend of mine, where he said to me, well, friends don't have to agree with each other. And this is the only, this type of thing you say when you don't know who you're saying it to. Because the first response to that is naturally they don't. But the second response to that is, well, this also depends on what the matter is. Because if it's a political matter, for example, a civil matter, for example, you can't really reconcile that disagreement. Alternatively, what if it's a very simple domestic matter where you have a mutual friend who's abusing their spouse, and one of you says, yo, this isn't right, but the other one says, well, bros before hoes or what have you. Not necessarily, well, I mean, a male could be a hoe, so regardless, the idea that you put your platonic bond before the morality of the situation is like, yeah, naturally. So you, person, putting that platonic bond first, you're saying the morality of it doesn't matter. To betray, to call it out, to do anything to save their partner from that abuse would be treachery towards the friend group. Therefore, this is completely wrong. You, person who are of the moralistic sense, you have to accept that this just isn't how things work for us to continue being friends. And like, see, there's where that thought goes. You don't just say you can disagree with friends. You say you can disagree with friends on small things, but as they get worse and worse and years compound and you find out that you don't really agree on anything at all, even the stuff that is supposed to bond you as friends, it's like, oh no, now is the time for this to end. But no, it doesn't go like that because it is, again, talking at someone, to someone from behind their back. Another instance is from an aunt of mine who said, after I left the family, something along the lines of, "Well, what did your father's side do for you?" And again, that's a very talking at someone from behind their back sort of thing, because I know from that statement that it goes, "Well, I can't believe he would leave the family when we were there for him and this and that and so forth." Like, you're going to use the absence of my father's side as a means of indicating your not moralistic superiority, moralistic superiority. It's like, well, in the conversation you were having over there without me, that again made sense to you, but when I'm actually involved in it, it goes me going absolutely nothing, the same as the British government has done absolutely nothing for me. I'm not measuring my response to the politics in America based on how much the politics in Britain has affected me, because then I'm like, well, you can't subtract or add something with zero and change the sum of it. 1 minus 0 is 1. Wait, no, it's negative 1, isn't it? Oh, I mean, that's kind of more to the point, though, isn't it? It's like, well, if the value is 0 and you already have a negative, then it's like, well, okay, the negative has worsened. And, like, again, there it goes. Like, you've come to me with an idea, a thought, perhaps even a bit of advice. And what I'm noticing about it is just that you didn't invite me into the room where you came up with this. I was not a part of the conversation. And what I'm supposed to do at this last minute, as you finally decided to speak, is that, oh, yes, you must be right for some reason. Or, no, it usually comes up as, I must be wrong for some reason. And the silly thing about all of that is that if this back talk involved any true aspect of myself, it's like one of the first things that would be on the table is the fact that this person, me, is never afraid to admit I'm wrong. Sure, I get embarrassed about it. Who doesn't? But the difference between me and a lot of other people when they're wrong is that I saying, you know what? I fucked up. I can correct myself now. Where they're like, well, no, I never did that. Or I never fucked. I'm like, okay, you didn't, right? You didn't. And like, okay. So, right, that would be the first thing on the table. And then it's like all things put on the table afterwards would have to respond to data already presented. But what I often saw, and with these people who would talk at me from behind my back, is this sort of refusal to accept the person that they're actually talking to. It goes something along the lines of, well, we already said this and we already decided that, so he has no choice but to read the line written on the page. It's like, why would I do that? Where is the logic here? How do you presume to advise when logic isn't in the room? I've seen it so often, and it just makes me go, if the premise of this is true, this idea that you want to maintain friendship or familial bonds or what have you, how is it that you don't consider the individual in question? And that's honestly a rhetorical question, if I were to be real, because I already know the answer. When we talk about people, behind their back, like in the general way, is more along the lines of venting about our frustrations with them. And like to a degree, I can say, you know what, that's fine. Again, we aren't going to like it being the person talked about, but I respect the need to vent. However, there's a moment where venting becomes kind of this cult like situation where everyone has gathered to drag someone over the coals, and now everybody is either thinking about how that person is a demon in their life or placing themselves in regard to that person as some sort of ethical figure. Ethical isn't even the word. I've said moralistic a lot here, but yeah, it goes on the lines of like, yeah, I might be involved with dragging them upon across the code, but you know what? I'm not treating them poorly about it, so I must be good, right? And it's like, again, you've excluded this person from all of these conversations you're having about them, and you haven't stopped and said, wait, who are they really? And it's just ultimately fascinating to me. Baffling, truly. Well, it's like, okay, I bring up this former friend. I bring up this, not a former aunt, I guess by virtue of blood being a chain, it can't be former aunt, but it certainly isn't here. That's neither here nor there. I bring these two up, and it's like, you're not the worst offenders of this, you're just the most recent examples. It's like, again, I'm sitting here thinking, all right, how does this work for you? Because prior to that, it is, well, the hood, the wretched hood, where each and every mind is almost entirely consumed by ruin, by degradation, where each and every person thinks to themselves that they are justified in their hideosity and remain hideous for it. Hideosity sounds better than hideousness. Regardless, the hood, where you can see that all the time. And the trick, the betrayal, the trap is the family that raises you to think you have to read that script. You have to play the role they're giving you. When you can see in no uncertain terms that the end of this play, the end of this performance leaves you destitute and broken and lost to the world. They will tell you to destroy yourself because it is how they speak about you behind your back. And you're supposed to say, well, I must simply do this and ignore what I truly see ahead of me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. One of the most repeated offenders to this would be my grandmother, of course, whose act of talking at me from behind my back always lands in this notion of adultification and pushing upon me roles that don't make sense. And at that point, the audacity to do it does make sense because, like, you don't want the person in the room saying otherwise. You don't want the person in the room deciding anything for themselves. Because if they are in there talking, then you have to recognize that, wait, this isn't even a tribunal. This is theatrical sacrifice. and we want to step away and make sure that the sacrifice is set into stone. You want me to walk into a malice and say, I will willingly be the child you sacrifice for the sake of your utopia. And like, no, I'd sooner burn a malice to the ground. And in a way, I suppose you kind of know that. Because it goes on and on and on. And there's this desperation to make sure that everyone else is in the room too. Make sure everyone else follows the same script. Compound. The eyes compound. The belief compound. The roles until all the pressure of it crushes me down into the nothing you want me to be, because it's ultimately what you want me to be. Nothing. Nothing more than, damn, I finished my tea. I really need a bigger cup. Nothing more than a thing that moves to your whim. And I look back on that with, well, disgust, because I think, wow, your plan was suppression. You talked at me so long because you thought this would all work out like that. You did not think for a moment, what would this person actually say? Of course not, because the training was say what I want to hear. And it's like when the training is say what I want to hear, then at a point you're saying, hey, lie to me. And I'm like, well, if you insist. Ugh. But I just think about it sometimes. How do you always do that? How do you always talk about them without involving them? How do you make that work? Because I can't rationalize it. I keep trying to. Like, not in the sense of there's logic here, but in the sense of self serving logic. And to a degree, I get that it's all about wanting somebody to just be something for you so that you don't have to do something for yourself. But the logic is, or where the incongruity occurs, is the idea that you think you can overwrite their autonomy. Like, maybe I'm just not selfish enough to get it. What am I saying? Of course, I'm not selfish enough to get it. Because every time I think about it, just like, surely, even if it's not me in this situation, surely you understand that there will come a point where this person is done. And no, that's wrong because they don't think that. I've watched this in group settings where it's clear that there are multiple people talking about one person or myself behind their back, my back. And I have watched this happen in one on one situations where I'm watching somebody in a relationship and I see them telling themselves a story about why that person has to stay with them, despite the fact that they're a bad girlfriend or a bad boyfriend. It's like, I see you weaving the transactional ideology onto this and that. At that point, why wouldn't you just make it transactional truthfully? It's like, no, because they don't want to accept that that's the type of person they are. And they keep being the type of person they are. And they keep staying that type of person. That's basically redundant, but it's just, okay, you don't realize that you have to involve another person here. Even if it's one on one, you have to involve that other person. So you're hopeful that they don't get fed up, they don't get burned out, they don't just say, all right, nothing here is going to change, so I'm just going to skedaddle. And I know that a lot of them hope they can force codependency. That's what my ex thought. Like, oh, you want something from me, then you have to do something for me. It's like, no, you absolute idiot. Again, if you involved me in the conversation you were having about me, you would know that is not how I think at all. And that's the hinge point, actually. That is not how I think. You can't figure out how somebody thinks unless you talk to them. And well, I don't make it easy for people to talk to me, I'll be absolutely frank. I prefer my monologues because when I'm talking to another person, I have to ask myself, well, the question that the people talking behind their back never ask: where is that person at mentally, spiritually, in life, temporally? And can they meet me from there? Nevertheless, to go back and like, okay, I'm watching a guy or girl with their partner tell themselves all sorts of things that don't involve respecting their partner's own interiority. It's like, so you don't want to have the relationship, or do you believe that you can break them and maintain the relationship? What is going on here? I don't fully understand. And I'll be absolutely honest. I never understand the mechanisms of selfishness or ego or narcissism. It's like, to a degree, to a scientific degree, I get it, but I don't understand how the system is running the simulations and deciding that these are the most accurate simulations to life. But I do know that they will just try to force these simulations to be. So we go back to my ex for a moment, and it's like, okay, here is another situation of talking at someone from behind their back. And it's very obvious, very blatant talking about someone from behind their back. And each thing said to me is said with this idea that I just have to agree with it. I'm looking at, you don't get it. Somehow you don't get it. You don't seem to understand. One such thing was post breakup, where the idea was, well, we should stay friends in case you need a ride at some point. It's like, no, 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 you don't get it. You're offering a half logic to a logical person. The premise is remain connected because you might require assistance. The response is maintain healthy connections so that you're not constantly spending your time in transactional situations. The response isn't stay friends with somebody you didn't actually like being around. The response is make friends with people you enjoy the company of, and if these people enjoy your company, then helping you out in these moments of need is easy, simple, because helping you is something that brings them joy just as much as it would bring you relief. It's like you're telling me to accept a transactional framework. You're offering, and I'm running the simulation, and in my head it's going, so for me to benefit from this, I'm going to have to continue to spend time with you. And when I spent time with you before, I hated it. It burnt me out. I despised you, and not quite the company you kept, but I did not like them either. And the math is supposed to be ignore previous emotional information and proceed forward with a zero emotional model in order to extract resources. And like, no, how dare you, first and foremost? How dare you bring that to my system and tell me to run it? It's like, no, I do not like inefficient code. I do not like executables that don't execute. I do not like it. And I, again, do not understand how you're running it. But I do, unfortunately, and I keep going back to it, but it's basically like, it's not an interior out. No, no, no. It's not an interior out model where you're basing your logic off of interior considerations. No, I could probably phrase it a different way. It's less about deduction and more about what's the word I'm looking for here? Something like reverse engineering, where you're saying to yourself, this is the conclusion I want. I'm going to pull things backwards until they make sense to line up there, versus you're not testing the theory, essentially. You already have your conclusion and you want to see how you can fudge the experiment to give you the answer you're looking for. It's like, it goes to what I said a moment ago about being able to admit that I'm wrong. Like, oh, you can't. So the story you're telling in your head has already, what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, concluded, yes. And in roping me in, you're telling me to just do as you say, and that will make what? You feel more comfortable, you feel more confident. What is it? What's the word I'm looking for here? The desire? What is the desire? Or better put, what makes you think you can force a person to play a role like that? Like again, I already said you're building backwards from your desired conclusion, but if it's all about this performance to complete what you want to complete, why aren't you looking for the proper? No, the idea is that they are looking for the proper actor for it. They're looking for that person who has, throughout their life, had their interiority stumped down in silence for so long, the autonomy robbed of them for so long that, well, at this point, it's too late for them to self actualize. Like, hmm. Then you can't form a healthy relationship, can you? This game went from talking about the notion of talking at someone from behind their back to the psychology of why a person would do that. And what loops it back for me, it's like, okay, so what I would ask to that former friend, what I would ask to that former ex, what I would ask to that former aunt is, okay, why would I personally be invested in the conclusion you're trying to reach? Why would I personally accept the version of me you're offering? Like, I get why you're doing. I see why you're offering that. It helps with insecurity. It helps with fear, rejection. It helps with your fear of the unknown. But why would I, personally, me, agree to this? And, well, like I said already, they reached this point by not inviting me to the table. And I just kind of like look at it like, okay, well, I have seen this enough that I don't have any reason to really doubt it anymore. And the life lesson I have to learn is just like, oh, when you see it, you're seeing it. No need to second guess. And of course, that's one of those things they also need. It's like, oh, yeah, always second guess yourself. Like, one's family member, neither the former aunt or I didn't mention any other family, oh, grandmother, neither the former aunt nor the grandmother said, ah, blast, I've lost the sentence. Oh, no, 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 no. It was going to go along the lines of, are you sure? Which is like, not what those two said, but certainly other family members and certainly other connections have done, where it's like, well, how can you be so confident? And I'm like, yeah, because failure is not the end state. Failure is only the end if you are afraid of failing, afraid of how you look for failing, would be too embarrassed by that failure. It's like, no, if I can persist, I will be able to. And like, if I'm not sure today, if I am wrong, then well, that's the thing about being able to admit that you're wrong. You can learn from the error you've made. And that's pretty much like, I mean, ultimately the thought. You talk about someone from, well, you talk about someone, and then you talk to them from behind their back. And they're not supposed to notice the room you were in prior to this moment. They're only supposed to see the script that you want them to play. It's like, stars above. I honestly get tired of the script. It's amateur writing. And where am I even going with that part of the thought? I guess one place I go is like, people respond based on their experiences in life. And so it's like they can't really reconcile an anomaly that well. They have to fit it into something they already recognize and go from there. It's like, well, here's the thing, especially when it comes to the hood, that wretched and hideous place. I am exceptionally anomalous. I have, damn, hold on. This is a crystal ball moment. I have pondered probability and saw all that needed to be seen to know how to reach all the conclusions I have seen before. And what maintains my anomalous status is that I have not hmm, not solidified, calcified into one probable form. So long as the future is open to me, then I will always accept that I am able to be someone who lives in it. which means rapid change, regular change. And that's where the anomalous nature of it all comes from. This is a creature without stagnation, slower moments. Damn, I could have used an energy metaphor there, but I'm blanking on one to describe a state of energy that isn't in high fission or fusion. We'll have to ponder that deeply, right? But it's like it's not moving. It seemed to you, with your untrained eye, that these entity isn't moving, but you would be able to tell that they were if you were to peek at their interiority. If you were able to recognize that they, while they may not seem like a lot on the outside, there's so much more to them on the inside. Like, surely if I've said enough of that by now, or so I thought. Too often I thought. I'm like, well, shit. Either you don't believe me, or I'm speaking another language as far as you're concerned. It's like, well, again, shit. Where were we going with that? Toward our conclusion. Well, like, I can certainly say people talk at others from behind their back. And I guess the only thing you can really do is acknowledge that that is happening and keep going at your own pace. Yeah, that's really it. Because those same people, they're desperately looking for a conclusion. And like, well, I'm still alive. I'm still able to transform. There's no conclusion set in stone. I refuse it. The only ending I accept, no, I've already claimed I plan to defeat death, so I can't even say that the only conclusion I'll accept is my own demise. I will for a bit, though. That's a good way to get a lot of sleep. But to the rest, it's just like, nah, it happens. People do it. So acknowledge it and keep going. They will point at a place and tell you, this is where you have to stop. And you can look at it, whip out a magnifying glass. It would be great if I had a magnifying glass around here somewhere. Whip out a magnifying glass, take a good look at it and say, this doesn't look like where I plan to stop. And they'll be desperate to make sure it is, to convince you that it is. But it's like, I will consider this for a little bit, but ultimately, most likely, keep moving on. I didn't come this far just to accept where someone else told me to stop. I did not grow up in the hood when all souls are repulses to look upon and say to myself, this is where I'll stop. I don't know where I'll stop because I haven't seen it yet. And as I continue forward towards it, perhaps I would be delighted if you were to join me once again.